Hello again, guys. So in this video, I'm just gonna be discussing some new projects I've created. Like the other two, this one is quite crucial as well. These projects that I'm gonna be releasing on Patreon, I've created for myself, and basically what these projects are going to be doing is essentially increasing the surface area of the sound naturally in a very sexy musical way that will not only increase the volume of the sound, but it will give you a perceived surface area increase without changing the sound or ruining it. So my analogy that I'm trying to explain to you guys is you have a door and then you have a house. I find with most samples, most patches, most vocals that you get straight out of pack or synth are going to be quite small, quite two-dimensional, and quite how do you say it, dimensionally wise they're not going to be very big. And to compete with these big commercial tracks, you'll hear like a Methodist mix with a super massive bass, a super massive vocal. You're not going to be able to get that naturally with a stereo widener or any gain reduction utility or clipper or compressor or limiter. The way I've sought out this operation is essentially creating a process routing project where you slap in the stem and you run it through different states and different operations that I've configured over the years, which essentially manipulates the audio and stretches it out and gives it surface area. And the way I think about it is almost like a pixel to pixel ratio of an image. So you have 100 by 100 pixel, 1000 by 1000 pixel, and this operation is supposed to specifically implement that. There should be about 3 projects that I'll be releasing into the folder, and each one will be doing a different kind of shape and a different kind of surface area expansion that you can play around with and experiment with. But the idea is almost like let's say you record a vocal and you place it in the mix, you process it, you mix it, and you gain stage it in. But the vocal is very small, very 2D, very narrow, and you just want to add some dimension and size and surface area to it to help it sit in the mix and essentially give it some sort of character or some sort of integrity or identity in the mix that you wouldn't typically get. This project will essentially allow you to do that, and it's very easy to use. Like I said, I've already created it for myself, and all you have to do is slap in the stem, assign it to mixer 1, and once you've assigned it to mixer 1, you just use the VU meter on mixer 1 to gain stage it to 0 dB VU, and you render through on the exit node. And like I said, after a couple renders, just A/B a reference track of your desired choice, whatever track you are, and just see how the surface area of the reference target compared to your one scales out. Now this is a very advanced project and it uses a lot of different scientific analogies that I've creatively explored and implemented. And like I said, you're going to get a lot of saturation types that I've employed, different gain utility and gain structures in the mix, different dimensional multiplications and expansions and manipulations that aren't commonly understood based on what I've learned on the internet. I've had to really put myself through hell to figure it out and utilize it correctly. And like I said, you can use this on your pre-master, your kick, your snare, your vocal, your basses, your synths. If you're into neuro, dubstep, drum and bass, whatever, you can use these to as a creative outlet for your sound design. And this will magnify the surface area of your sounds really heavily and give you a tool that exercises a skill set that you can't naturally obtain through a plugin or a single implementation. And it's going to keep the sound the same. You're not going to get any distortions, you're not going to get any artifacts, and you're not going to get any modulations that take away from the sound. You're just going to add true surface area, volume and size, which is quite useful. And like I said, it's going to take a couple years of dabbling about and reverse engineering other people's work to figure it out, and you're going to have to go through some sort of miracles to like come to the light bulb moment on how to fix it. This is one of them. It's a 3D triangle morph hover 3D that I've created project. Essentially splits the sound into multiple saturation states. I've used an auxiliary equation with 3 different X, Y, E attributes to substitute into the equation a formula or recipe or system to split the sound into different saturation states and then group them back together here. Once I've grouped them together, you're going to use different multiplication theorems. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and 8 becomes 4, 8 becomes 2, 4, and then 2 and 1. These reciprocals are almost like a pyramid cascading on top of itself. So you have a base of the pyramid with 4 blocks, and then you have another layer with 2 and then 1. And I found with some experimenting and some dabbling, this creates a pyramid effect towards the listener, which builds up the sound. Likewise, if you go from 1 block to 2 block to 4 block to 8 blocks, this layering of the blocks creates a, how do I say, an illusion of the sound getting bigger on top of its previous state. And I've carefully implemented this with different saturation modes in the multiplications in between the auxes to help amplify the effect. And the advantage of using these projects is obviously I've used different saturations and gain structures to really amplify the signal's perceived loudness coming out of the render. My math says each render you'll probably add about 200 decibels of true loudness to the sound's original amount, and that's just for the gain augmentation. Through the surface area expansion and the initial feed, you're going to stretch out the sound by a lot. I mean, if you start off with a vocal that's 100 by 100 pixel in the mix, you could be ending up with a vocal that's 5000 by 5000 times pixel at the end of the mix. And this is going to really help you define the sizing of your sounds and essentially regulate almost a unified discrepancy between the sound sizings, which isn't typically looked at from what I've seen on the internet as an engineer or a sound design person. They typically just go for some basic laws of sound design, or do some saturation, use a stereo winding tool, and those things work. But in practice, which I've discovered, reverse engineering other people's mix downs and masters, that isn't going to be easily done using those tools. You gotta really think outside the box and come up with some sort of understandings that you typically aren't going to get through a practice of education. It's more of a creative experimentation that eventually resolves the issue, not only scientifically from my perspective, but also creatively. And like I said, let's say you put in a bass into the mix, and the bass's sizings and the perceived surface area don't really hit the sweet spot of what you want to perceive in the sounds. You can use these projects to stretch them out and give you that unified perspective of each element. And like I said, because of the way I've saturated the sounds and fed into the chain, and obviously regulated the saturations and gain reductions, and essentially create a controlled feed in and out of the render, you're going to find that you're not just getting a stretch of the sound in a two-dimensional way, which sounds kind of boring and a kind of inaccurate way of explaining. You're actually doing some sort of creative sound design that expands the surface area, cuts into it, saturates it, fills it in, and gives you a lot of contour, a lot of precision, and a lot of definition that no plugin that I've used on the planet will give you in one render or one implementation. I mean, I've seen producers in YouTube videos open up a saturator plugin and spend 5 minutes trying to put a drive dial in with one knob. With these projects, you just slap in the stem, gain stage it, and render out. The render out comes out 0 dB VU, and the render in comes in at 0 dB VU, and that's your only control function, just basically a knob and a dial. So like I said, if you have any engineering experience or any obviously mixing experience, this should be very easy to use, and it shouldn't have any trouble with you whatsoever. And there are some other projects that I've created with the same system, but you're going to get a slightly different shape. With this one, it's a triangle going up and a triangle going down, unified and grouped together. With the other operation that I'm doing, you're getting an X shape, and with the third one, you're getting more of a spherical expansion. And these shapes aren't going to be two-dimensional. I've managed to crack a way to create a three-dimensional axis in the stereo field, which has a negative, a 0, and a positive 1 attribute in the stereo field. So you're going to get 3D contouring of the sound, and you're going to get a surface area expansion with the 3 states of perceived depth in the stereo field as well. And if you're into that new modern sound design that no one's really tried to develop, I think I've done that here. So if you utilize these projects and like it, just give me some feedback. I will be uploading 3 of these. Like I said, there will be a triangle up and down, almost like a star shape in 3D. You're going to get an X shape, which is more 2D, but it's more for stretching out the sound and giving you a almost like an X shape that almost reproduces the sound over itself and reproduces a replication of itself in an X format. And then you have the sphere one, which gives you a 3D sphere with 3 axes with a spherical depth. And like I said, this took me years of understanding, experimenting to evolve and make work and actually utilize correctly. And the gain staging's being done for you, the application's being done for you, and I've created the project for you, for myself specifically, but now you can use it as well. And like I said, if you're an engineer, a producer, or even just mixing, I think these tools that I've put on the internet are going to really help crack a boundary that hasn't really been addressed from what I've seen on the internet. I mean, like if you go on online YouTube videos and go, how do I make a sound bigger or wider? You're just going to get a very dumbed down basic implementation of understanding that says use a stereo widening tool to make it wide. And then you go and reference the track and you see that the reference track base is 5, 6, 7, 8 times bigger than your one in terms of pixel ratio. So your base will be sat at 500 by 500 pixels in the stereo field, and this new SKRILLEX track will be 5000 by 5000 pixels. And then you're going to be numb-nutted almost. You're going to be sat there going, how the hell am I supposed to match that SKRILLEX sound? So you pull out gain utility, a clipper, you experiment with different trial and error results, and at the end result you'll just fall for complacency. It's not going to really do it. With these projects, you're going to slap in your bass sound, you're going to render a couple times, and you're going to A-B the reference track with a true peak level match, and you're going to hear and see the result within a couple renders, and that's going to give you a confidence boost and a more realistic outcome than the half-assed one. So yeah, I'm just going to be uploading 3 different shapes, 3 different surface area expansions, dimensional expansions, not only in 3D but in 2D. And because of the way the saturate is cut into the sound as you render, it's going to give you a lot of fidelity and a lot of precision in the end result as well, which you might enjoy. And like I said, you can finish off a pre-master, render it off, run this through it, and it'll expand the mix, it'll expand the sounds in the mix, it'll cut into the mix, and it'll give you this weird alien, very unique result. And if you want, you can transfer the stems through 3 different projects to give you a 3D web almost of different contours and different positions of expansions and manipulations in the stereo field that is not common practice or common understanding. You will understand what happens when you use these projects. And like I said, I will be posting these 3 shapes for about 50 USD, which will come to about 35-40 pounds, and I think it's a fair price with the results you're going to get. Like I would happily spend £200, £300, 400 on a plugin that would be able to emulate this for me in one knob, but you can't get that unfortunately. So like I said, you just drag in the project, you gain stage down to 0 dB VU, and you render through the exit node and loop the function that I just explained. And all the projects will have the same thing, just different sizing. The only thing you're going to have to look out for is the plugins and the DAW. You're going to need FLSTUDIO, you're going to need Klanghelm VU meter, which I'll put in the description. You're going to need NEWFANGLED SATURATE. You're going to need the BLUECAT gain utility, which is free. And you're going to need the KSHMR chain plugin as well. And once you have all these plugins and you have FLSTUDIO in your disposal, you can just open up the projects and run your stems through them. And you can be really creative. I mean, you can literally render your entire mix, individual sounds through this a couple times, run it through some of the shape operations, maybe look at my other videos with the forwardness and the saturation operations, do those, mix your track with the new augmented stems, and then when you get to the pre-master stage, render off the pre-master and do the same thing there in different variations. And you can really get a professional, commercially unique sound that most producers, I think, must have spent 1,000,000 joules of synergy to get. And it's going to be very exciting for you, and it has been for me. So I'll leave that there. I'll link the Patreon links in below, and if you like it, you can give it a go. Thanks again.